The lights were dim, only half lit, backstage behind the massive curtains of the grand auditorium. The murmur of the audience drifted in, conversation, anticipation, the faint rustle of programs being shuffled. With each flash of camera light in the hall beyond, someone behind the curtain drew a little deeper breath. Mara Lopez pressed her palm to the cool metal handle of the door that led onto the stage. She steadied her heartbeat, listening to the distant hum of the spotlight motors and the low buzz of voices. Today was her audition day for the big televised talent show, America's Giant Talent (AGT) style, though the show she was aiming for was international. She had traveled from a small coastal town, she had scrimped and saved, rehearsed until her fingers and throat ached. She had brought with her a single guitar and the song she wrote last summer under the stars. Behind her, a slender young man named Darius Reed flicked his fingers nervously over the brim of his vintage newsboy cap. He had been practicing magic acts in his bedroom for years, shuffling cards, vanishing coins, producing doves, well, one dove, which panicked and nearly escaped. He had dreamed of this stage since his 16th birthday, when he watched his first big talent show and said to himself, "That's me." They both waited in the queue line of hopefuls, singers, dancers, contortionists, comedians, instrumentalists, even a duo act where two sisters were balancing on one another's shoulders while juggling flaming torches, but we'll come back to them in a moment. The stage manager called, "Contestant 142, you're on in 1 minute." Mara looked at the number on her badge, 143. She exhaled. She met Darius's eyes, they gave each other small nods of encouragement. Mara leaned out a little, looked at the bright stage lights shimmering beyond the curtain's edge. She imagined herself stepping into that brightness, strumming her guitar, letting her voice carry. She closed her eyes for a moment, recalling the first time she sang at the town pier, under the moonlight, when only the waves and a few fishermen listened. She thought of how the sea's hush had wrapped around her then, how the night breeze had carried her voice. She hoped that same hush might be with her here, even though thousands would watch. Darius took off his cap, ran a hand through his hair. He pulled out a small red silk handkerchief, the thin cloth he used for the grand finale of his trick. He had practiced the trick so many times he could do it blindfolded. But here, the weight of the moment pressed on him. He swallowed, took a deep breath. He thought of his grandmother, who told him, magic isn't just about the trick, it's about the wonder you give people. He vowed to give them wonder. The auditions hall beyond the curtain sounded like a wave about to break, the moment when everyone is poised, waiting for the crash. The host's voice boomed from the PA system. "Next up, contestant 142, please enter stage left." A cheer. Then footsteps. The curtain rustled, someone crossed the threshold. The bright lights flashed, the audience erupted in applause. The stage felt vast, unforgiving, a white box of spotlight with no corners. Behind the curtain, Mara and Darius watched. Their hearts pounded. Mara turned to Darius. "Good luck," she whispered. He nodded. "You too." She wiped a bead of sweat from her brow, straightened her guitar strap. Up ahead, a young dancer in shimmering costume emerged onto the stage and launched into an electrifying routine of flips and spins. The audience stood and cheered. Mara felt a twinge of envy and awe. She thought, "Wow, that's big. That's what they came for." Then it was her moment. Her cue was called. "Contestant 143, please enter stage left." She rose, stepped toward the curtain, felt her guitar's cool body against her thigh, heard the rustle of fabric and the murmur of the audience receding behind the thick velvet. She exhaled and stepped out. The stage lights blinded her for a moment. She squinted, let her eyes adjust. The audience seats stretched out, invisible in the bright wash of light, but she could feel dozens of eyes turned toward her. She placed the guitar mockingly in its position, strapped it on. The hush deepened, the host's voice faded, only silence remained. She took a breath. Then she played. Her fingers found the chord, effortless from muscle memory, the song she wrote alone, in the quiet hours before dawn, away from expectation. Her voice rose, full and warm, carrying the story of wanting, of leaving, of home and longing. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the melody carry her. The audience listened, not a murmur. She felt that hush again, like the waves at night, only now amplified, shared. She sang of waves hitting rocks, of the tide pulling back, of small town lights fading in the rear view mirror, but of hope shining ahead. She sang of magic, not illusions, but the magic of being heard. When the song ended, she gently strummed the final chord and held it. Silence. Then applause. Not thunderous, but solid and warm. She exhaled, a smile breaking. She looked toward the judges' table, three faces lit with surprise and delight. Behind her, in the wings, Darius was watching too. He saw her shoulders relax, saw her succeed in commanding that stage. He felt inspired. He thought, if she can turn a borrowed auditorium into her town pier again, maybe I can make them believe in my magic. She left the stage and passed Darius in the wings. He grinned at her. That was beautiful. She whispered back, thank you. Can't wait to see what you do. He nodded, lifted the red handkerchief in his pocket as though it were a talisman. One of the stage crew whispered to Darius, you're up in 5. He gulped, nodded, and took a moment to close his eyes, draw a breath, wipe his palms. Then he headed toward the door, toward the lights, toward the possibility. Lights again. The stage felt different now. Darius stepped out through the curtain, the audience more present now, the applause still lingering from the previous act. He wore his vintage newsboy cap, his outfit carefully chosen, a dark vest over a crisp white shirt, his trousers tailored, his shoes polished. He carried his deck of cards and the red silk handkerchief in one pocket. He nodded to the host, who welcomed him with a warm smile. The audience quieted. He placed a small pedestal center stage. He looked at the judges, then into the crowd. He felt a flicker of nerves, but reminded himself of his grandmother's words, magic isn't just about the trick, it's about the wonder you give people. So he took a deep breath and began. First came sleight of hand. He invited a volunteer from the audience. A woman in the front row raised her hand. He walked to her, asked her name, Karen. He asked her to pick a card. She did. He asked her to show it to no one but herself. He placed it back, shuffled expertly. The audience watched his hands, but he also watched their faces, expectation, curiosity, leans and changes in posture. He made a humorous line, if I mess up, I'm blaming the backstage coffee. The audience chuckled. Then came the vanish. He took the red handkerchief, made it float between his fingers, then wrapped it around his deck, snapped the cloth away, and the cards seemed to vanish from the deck entirely, only to reappear inside the handkerchief as a tiny fluttering fan of cards. The audience gasped. He smiled. He told Karen to reach into that fan and pick a card. She did. He matched it, the exact card she chose. The audience burst into applause. That was just the opening. Next came the big finale, the dove. He brought out a small wooden box with a sliding lid. He placed it on the pedestal, tapped it thrice, flicked a wrist, and opened the lid. The box was empty. He then gestured, whispered softly, and a white dove emerged in a puff of feathers. The audience cheered, but the dove looked nervous. The bird fluttered one wing, hopped. Darius leaned softly to it. Okay, friend, your stars tonight. The dove calmed. He guided it to fly a small circle above his head, then gently alight on his hand. The audience stood, clapping, astonished. He concluded with a flourish. The dove vanished in his palm and reappeared inside a sealed envelope that he handed to the host. The host opened it. Inside was the volunteer Karen's card. The audience erupted. The judges sat stunned, forearms on the table, smiles wide. As the applause died down, Darius let himself relax for the first time that evening. He looked out at hundreds of faces, cameras flashing. He felt powerful and small at once. Powerful because he brought a bit of wonder into their evening, small because this was just one performance among many, just one moment. But he knew it mattered. It felt like the magic his grandmother taught him, connection, surprise, delight. Backstage again, Darius removed his cap and let the rush of adrenaline fade to a warm glow. Mara was waiting. She hugged him. You did it, she whispered. His face split into a grin. We did it, he said, because the success of one felt bigger because they saw each other succeed. In the green room they joined the other contestants. Some were elated, others disappointed. The swirling range of emotion filled the air, relief, regret, hope. Darius sat for a moment, looked at his hands, thought of the small magician's kit his grandmother gave him when he was 10. He thought of all the hours alone practicing in the garage, juggling cards and coins, dreaming bigger. He realized this stage was bigger than his garage, bigger than his town. But the same dream, to share something, to be seen. Mara sat beside him, guitar against her knee. She said, "Whatever happens, if I don't get through, I'm proud I stood up there." He nodded. "Same. And I'll watch you on the show if you go. I'll be cheering." She looked at him and smiled. "And I'll be watching you turn the impossible into something real." Later, the host announced the results. Both Mara and Darius were selected to advance to the live rounds. The cheers, the confetti, the flashing cameras felt surreal. Mara ran to Darius, they high-fived, laughed, hugged strangers. The fire juggler sisters, the singer from last week, the tightrope act, all were swept into the spectacle. But Mara and Darius looked at each other and saw something singular, the promise of tomorrow. In the quiet moments afterward, Mara wandered outside. The night air hit her face. She looked up at the sky, thought of her small coastal town, the waves she sang over, the horizon she left behind. She thought of how far she had come just by stepping on that stage. In the nearby street a cafe still had lights on. She imagined sitting there and strumming her guitar late into the evening. And then she thought, soon, lots of people will listen. She smiled at the thought. Darius stepped outside too. He sat on the curb, looked at his reflection in the glass doors of the theater, cap in hand, the red silk handkerchief in his lap. He thought of wonder. He thought of how the dove flapped its wings above the audience, how he felt the hush then the roar. He thought of his grandmother's proud face, the way she clapped even when nobody else did. He felt gratitude. He felt alive. They parted ways under the street lights, promising to meet tomorrow. To rehearse for the next round. The ghost of the performance still hummed in the air. A taxi passed, its headlights waving across their faces. The city beyond the theater held its own energy, people moving, lights blinking, life going on even as one moment faded into the next. Mara whispered. "Tonight I learned that the first step is the hardest, but you just have to step." Darius replied. "And I learned that magic isn't hidden away, it's right there, in the moment you share it." They walked into the night. Two hopefuls under the same big dream, ready for the next stage.